Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank you for tuning in today. My name is Brian Licata. I'm from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. I would like to introduce Michael Bao and Stephen Colavito, who are working on our small business recovery program as part of the New York City Small Business Recovery Force. With us today is Nicole Biscardi, who's a restaurant recovery specialist sitting out of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, but working with all of the chambers. Our goal today is to provide some information that will help you realign some of your business's needs. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to turn this over to Nicole, who will explain some ways that your business can pivot to get ready with the upcoming pandemic.
Hi, thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. What I'd like to talk about today really is just some best practices that restaurant and food and beverage operators can consider when looking forth to this coming winter. I know right now the regulatory environment is very uncertain. There's a lot of questions hanging in the balance in terms of in what capacity we'll be able to operate in the coming months. So based on where we are today, which is at 25% indoor dining, takeout and delivery as well. We have a 10 p.m. curfew citywide for alcoholic beverage service and also for on-site dining. So just to kind of summarize that up, every night at 10 p.m. you must have guests out of your establishment if you're a liquor SLA licensed establishment. So that means you can continue to do takeout and delivery past 10 p.m., but that cannot involve alcohol. That's kind of just like the state of play where we are today. I'd like to give just a quick overview of things I want to talk about with you. Two goals really for all businesses, especially the food and beverage businesses right now, is compliance and revenue. So I want to talk about how we can consider those going hand in hand. If you're doing on-site dining, there's definitely some pointers I can give you with regards to table positioning and decor, signage, how we're messaging these regulations that are currently imposed, some tips for your menu, how to improve your takeout and delivery offering, as well as a few notes on outdoor dining. So the two primary goals, as I mentioned, is to comply with regulations to keep our guests and employees safe, and also to maximize profitability while operating at this reduced capacity. So, right now it's 25% of your indoor seating is a huge blow to your revenue. And on top of that, we're now forced to comply with a litany of regulations, often with a reduced amount of staff. So this is a big challenge. I think it's important to recognize this pressure that's being put on your business and also be forgiving of yourself because this is a very challenging time. There's no two ways about it. So this is what I really want to discuss with you. In terms of table positioning, regulations right now require there be a minimum 6 feet of distance between parties. So if you're sitting your table 6 feet apart, you're not hitting the requirement. So for freestanding tables, as you can see here, you need about 6 feet in between the parties. So if you see the circle in the middle of the screen, these tables are more like 9 feet apart. Because we need to accommodate for where the guests are actually seated. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Definitely takes up a little bit more floor space. And if you were using 6 feet from table to table, you're probably calculating that inaccurately. Major tip is really just to push all your tables against the walls, especially for two-top tables. Along full height walls. This really makes people feel comfortable first and foremost, so they're protected on one complete side by a wall. This gives you an optimization of floor space because we're going back to back here with the 6-foot circle. And it just like, even on a regular day, pre-COVID, pushing all your tables or as many tables as you can against the perimeter of the restaurant or up against the walls really helps people physically and psychologically feel comfortable and protected. So as you can imagine, now more than ever, you want people to feel that way. I've been hearing from a lot of businesses that, people are reluctant to dine inside. Will that change as the weather gets colder? we're still yet to see that. But in any event, we want to be prepared, and we want to try and really create an environment where people feel psychologically and physically protected. So pushing the tables against the wall is like a big, first line of defense on that in terms of like the design and layout. If you have fixed tables and chairs or booths, which many restaurants do, you can't push them to the walls. So if you have booths, what I'd recommend is extending the backs of them to a minimum of 5 feet so that people are kind of feeling enclosed in their own little space. Any temporary partitions should be at least 5 feet, if not higher. So you want to just start to utilize, these can be those clear plastic panels. They can be made of something more substantial that kind of goes with your decor. It's up to you. There are options, but it's just the idea is to enclose and extend the backs. So this has a health benefit in terms of like the transmission of people's particles when they're unmasked and eating. And it also has that psychological component where people just feel more protected when the backs of the booths are higher. So this is a kind of a inexpensive quick fix that I'd recommend as well. When it comes to decor, right now a 25% full dining room feels empty, feels weird, looks weird. Taking your space and using plants or decor or like a harvest table. This is the Gramercy Taverns. This is a very fancy one, but some iteration of this with the holidays coming, pretty easy to get some, cornucopia items for Thanksgiving, or do a holiday table as we get closer to the Christmas and Hanukkah. This also just makes the room feel warmer and makes people feel a little more comfortable. Again, we're really on an uphill battle to make guests feel comfortable and relaxed. If they're tense and anxious, they're not going to stay, they're not going to spend. So we have to really focus on reality psychology to help them feel better about being inside of your establishment. So I would definitely encourage, you can do this yourself. This is very simple. We don't need to be hiring people to come in and do these arrangements, but setting up small spaces that make it feel warm and homey. In terms of tables as well, you may be in a situation where you're only seating every other table in your restaurant. So what do you do with that in-between table that cannot be seated? I definitely don't recommend setting it because you don't want there to be any confusion. So people are leaving every other table blank, but then that feels, again, empty and cold. So if you are utilizing every other table, I'd recommend doing a little flower or a candle or some sort of tabletop decor that goes along with your brand and the look and feel of your space, but is doing something to occupy that empty space. So it's still being indicative of not being able to seat that table, which you want to make very clear and avoid that confusion, but it still looks nice. And again, gives that kind of like warm feeling. In terms of signage, I don't know if you can see here, this is like a sign that says like the government says we have to shut down, and because of that you better wear a mask. Like, we want to keep our messaging focused on how much we care, right? We want to communicate regardless. We want to take the government out, we want to take the politics out, and we want to be just neutral and focus on a message of care. We're in the hospitality business, that's what we do. So let's extend that into our messaging in terms of coronavirus as well. I've seen so many really poor handwritten signs and, taped in the window really sloppily. We want to stay as far away from that as we can. That really just puts emphasis on the mandates and the rules, and it makes it political. And we all know we have to abide by these rules. This example here, in this together, 6 feet apart, something that's on brand, something that's in your color scheme, something that like fits your style and your tone of how you speak to your clients in general, is definitely recommended. And we want to stay away from like these weird negative signs that don't really focus on the point, which is like, we need to stay 6 feet apart, right? This is a very clear way to describe that, and this is on brand as well. there is a lot of signage that is required now from a compliance standpoint. The New York City Department of Health has a link, which I can share with you, that provides all of the signage you need. Again, that may not be on brand for your business's look and feel, but I'd encourage you to take a look and see what signs are required, and potentially you can make your own versions of those signs. But I think compliance is key, and we want to make sure that we are communicating in all of the ways that the government is requiring us as business owners to communicate, but we want it to look nice, and we want to soften the blow a little bit. So I think paying attention to your signage is definitely another element of how we can communicate with our guests in a positive manner. In terms of menu, I would be willing to bet that every single food and beverage operators could stand to reduce their menu a little bit. If you ever watch any of those Restaurant Rescue or Bar Rescue or any of those shows where the consultants come in, the first thing they do is whack the menu. So it's that time. I would really strongly recommend to everyone to start with an audit of your existing menu. Pull your numbers from your POS and get sales data. We need to see what is not selling on that menu. We need to sit down with chef, and we need to look at our food costs and our ingredient lists, and we need to see what's, food prices are very erratic right now. We need to see what's costing an arm and a leg, and we need to get that off the menu. So this is a collaborative effort between sales and, between operations and the front of the house. We really need to understand what on our menu is just simply not selling, what on our menu is simply too expensive, and how do we reduce that? We need to really consider cutting the high cost, low sales volume items. I would call that the low hanging fruit. This is killing your food cost and your profitability. One or two bad dishes, incorrectly priced with high sales volume, can really destroy your profitability. So we want to just do this simple check. I'm assuming everyone has some sort of POS system where they know what they're selling. And I'm assuming everyone has some sort of accounting system where they know what their food costs are. So we need to really sit down, collaborate between the front of the house and the back of the house, and figure out how we can tighten up the offering to make it more profitable. This by no means to reinvent your whole business or write a new menu. You just need to revise what you're working with. I would be willing to bet that everyone could probably cut about a third of the items off their menu and still not only maintain operations, but enhance your profitability. So this is just a quick exercise that you can sit down today and do to find ways to save money in your process of operating. In terms of takeout and delivery, I would encourage considering a separate menu. That's, in some ways, I would describe it as a subset of your dine-in menu. I say this because takeout and delivery volume is unpredictable. When we have seats in our restaurant, we are able to control the volume of customers coming in. In terms of takeout and delivery, that's less feasible. So we're not able to control our volume as much. So what we need to be able to do is really crank that food out. What you don't want to do is wind up in a situation where you're losing business because you can't fill orders accurately or quickly enough. So creating like a slightly more limited takeout menu, a little more focused, will help improve your production, because I'm assuming many of you are operating with reduced kitchen staff right now. So we want to try and streamline that. Consider packages for family style meals. I think another major challenge operators are facing is the food going out the door, the checks are low. We're missing out on revenue. We're not capturing the full potential of the sale when it goes out the door. So if you focus on like family style meals, bigger tickets, this will help you build your check average. It will help really make the decision-making process easy for your customers. And you can then also position your low cost, high margin dishes in this offering. So there's a few key things that if you consider these 3 points, can help drive revenue to a higher degree, can help your customers make decisions easier, and also help you obtain higher profitability in the work that you are actually producing. So in addition, if you have a liquor license, you can still do to-go booze until 10 p.m. in the same vein of a limited takeout offering, it will be challenging to essentially provide a full liquor bar for takeout. If you have a full liquor license and you're allowing people to order cocktails, let's call it a la carte, cumbersome, challenging. I'm sure you're working with a reduced bar staff as well. So I would also encourage streamlining, potentially batching cocktails or offering a more limited selection of specific types of drinks that are to go. But if you have a liquor license and you're not doing to go booze, I would definitely encourage it. And the main caveat there is just it must cease at 10 p.m. and it must always go with food. So even if you're doing takeout or delivery with alcohol, it must include food in the same capacity that it must include food on premise. Think about your customers in terms of going a step further with the takeout and delivery. Think about when and why your customers order. Not on a regular day, why they order now. I understand, neighborhood to neighborhood, there's different behaviors and different, groups of places where people order from, and everyone has their patterns and their behaviors. So being the business owner, I would assume that you have some of that data just right in front of you in terms of when and why your customers are purchasing food or drinks from you. So focus on marketing directly to that audience and their specific need. If you are busy weeknights because working families are ordering their dinners from you, focus on that. If you are historically busy on the weekends because you are primarily a bar and a nightlife venue, focus on meeting those customers where they are to the best of your ability in the current environment. So there are regulations that are going to impede some of those areas, but still think of your customer and who they are, why they come to you, and what they're taking or what they're buying when they do patronize you, and focus directly on that. Meet them with options to build your check and entice the higher spend. Catering has always been kind of an afterthought or a side business, a side revenue stream for restaurants. And I think right now what we really need to focus on is, the takeout and delivery offering as a mini catering company. The holidays are typically the highest revenue producing months of the year for restaurants, and we are going to miss that in terms of in-person gathering this year. So the holidays will be a lot smaller. Do you have an offering to suit the times? Your normal catering menu that feeds trays for 12 to 15 people is not really applicable today, considering there's a 10-person cap on gatherings in New York State. Again, without getting political or without really focusing on the regulation, let's work within the framework and think about, who can we sell to? Can we sell smaller format options? Somewhere between takeout and catering is this idea that I'm kind of describing. Who did you sell your catering to previously? Do you have a list? Why, do you have a marketing list? Can we send out communication on the types of packages you want to order? For the holidays, I think I've seen a lot of people doing like that 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 size package or dinners, like holiday meals, that sort of thing. I think people will still definitely have an appetite, no pun intended, for these types of meals, but I just don't know if they're going to be as large, and they're most likely not going to take place at your restaurant. So we have to just really think about that. We need to gather all the resources, any sort of client lists. If you have them in your POS, we need to export them. If you don't know how to get the data out of your reservation system or out of your POS system, it's 100% great reason to reach out to us in the Small Business Resource Network. We have not only myself as a restaurant specialist, we also have tech specialists that can wizard you through getting your data, it's yours, out of Resi, or getting your data out of Open Table, or getting your data out of Toast, so that you can create more comprehensive lists for marketing that targeted offering that I'm describing, and really understanding what your client needs and bringing them just that, and kind of taking away the other noise around it. Is very important right now. Some ideas for packages and presenting offerings, like Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, you have football, wings, ribs, growlers of beer. If you have a liquor license, even if you just have beer and wine license, you still have opportunities to send that product out. You can do girls' night packages on the weekends with healthy appetizers and dips, and do batches of Cosmos or big bottles of wine. You can set up packaging for like mom's night off on weeknights. You can do family style meals, homeschool cafeteria on weekdays, like kid friendly food. Like there's so many new challenges, I think, for families right now that it's probably a great place to focus. Thinking about who's homeschooling, parents working from home, like we're all living this, so to some degree. So think about, again, like everyone's clientele is different, but you know best. So I would definitely implore you to consider, like, what do you think would make sense, and maybe create an offering around it. And it's in essence, a reinvention of who you are as a business, without totally departing. We're still serving food and beverage, but it's just a different landscape now. So I think that these are just a few ideas I had off the top of my head. Here's an example of like the to-go packages and the drinks that I was talking about. Like this is a restaurant near my home, full menu, goes down further than this. But what they put on here, right up top, boom, dinner for 4. You could do an ossobuco, a chicken, short rib. It comes with sides, and it's like $60. So right there, that's $60. Boom. That will up your check average for sure. And then on this other side of their menu, they have a full liquor license, but they're just doing 4 cocktails to go. And the cocktails are sold in a 200 milliliter flask. They come with garnish, and they're 2 drinks each. And they cost like $20. So if like a family of 4 gets one of these and one of these, you have an $80 check for a dinner. And you also are just curating like a reduced menu. So like these items are all kind of geared towards low production, high margin, streamlined, because we have to keep in mind like our products, our cost of goods, and our cost of labor. So doing something like this will help us keep those costs down while also pushing up the revenue. So it's like a push and a pull that's putting us in a much better position, where we're making sure we're selling higher margin food at a higher volume of revenue, and with a slightly lower production cost. So this kind of hits all of them. And myself personally, like opening their menu and being like, okay, let's just get the short ribs. It's like a really easy decision, as opposed to going through a long, extensive menu and then asking everyone and who doesn't like this or that. This is kind of like a streamlined way for us to make it easy for our clients. And I think this particular restaurant did a great job of that. Outdoor dining. This was an article I was in New York Times last week that they got a quote from me on. Included it because I thought it was kind of funny. I call it's an alphabet soup of regulations, having to do with outdoor heating. It's definitely confusing in terms of what can be enclosed. So I'll just kind of hit this high level. You can enclose your outdoor structures. We see this everywhere. However, if you are enclosing more than 50% of the surface area of the walls, you will then be subject to indoor dining restrictions, which currently are 25%. So, for example, if your tent is a rectangle and you cover the 2 long sides, you must abide by indoor dining restriction, because that's covering more than 50% of the walls. If you cover 1 long and 1 short side, that is 50%. That's okay. So again, we can argue about this. We can be dissatisfied with the logic of this regulation. However, we still need to comply with it. So keeping that in mind is critical. You don't want to go through all the trouble and the expense of erecting an outdoor structure, having it seated a certain way to produce an expected amount of revenue, only to be inspected and told you have to take it down. So the same goes with the heaters. The heaters are just as challenging. I've included on this slide the general DOB guidance for your outdoor structures, which I believe will change. So we may have to update this. It should be changing in short order in terms of winterization, but currently today, this is the regulation. And then here's the comprehensive matrix from the FDNY that covers all of the outdoor heating options and the associated regulations. Guys, talking to you straight, it's hard to meet these restrictions in terms of the heating, especially with propane. I know they're widely available. I know the regulation is very complex and nearly impossible for most places to comply with. So the information's here. If you have questions about it, we're happy to answer those questions and escalate them, but they are very challenging and definitely require some review. In terms of, a lot of clients I'm talking with just don't know if it's worth it, the outdoor dining, as we get into the colder months. Like, I will have to spend X in order to keep the outside opening. Is it worth it? So that turns into really a risk versus reward computation, and every business is going to be different. My best advice, run numbers. How many outdoor seats could you have based on the regulation? And be honest and real with yourself. Don't cram tables in there and count seats that won't exist. How many outdoor seats could you have, and what would be the revenue potential given the current operating hours? So that's a quick, you could do this on a napkin, you could do this in Excel, but you need to understand, if you set up outdoors and you have to put walls or you don't, how many seats can you have, and what type of revenue can you anticipate? And I would suggest being conservative there as well. Compare that with the level of staff you would need, so you can understand the total cost. So if you put an additional 22 seats outside, you will need additional staff. We need to consider that cost as well. Now that we have considered the cost, is it possible for us to break even based on that revenue potential? Have to figure this out. Otherwise, you're just flying blind. Then determine what it's going to cost us to build and heat the outdoor space. When I say cost, not only the cost of equipment, but also the cost of operation. Propane has a cost, storage issues, or you need to pay a vendor to drop those tanks off daily. Electricity costs for electric, really minding the Con Ed situation and understanding the implied cost there. Maintenance of the devices, right? So be thorough when you're considering this, because honestly, for some operators, it's just not worth it. So I would definitely consider the cost, the revenue potential, and if you can really make this work before you just go, crazy on Amazon buying tents and heaters. It's not necessarily the best move for everyone. But again, the universe has been unfair in terms of who gets outdoor space and where it is. Like, if you have a parking lot, benefit. If you are curbside and you have a city bike dock and a fire hydrant or a bus stop, unfortunate, right? So it's very much a lottery in terms of what type of outdoor space you're working with in the first place. That's going to inform how much space you have to erect the structure. That's going to inform how much space you have to use different types of heating, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just like, do we do outdoor dining? I think there is definitely some more consideration, and really running the numbers will help you figure that out more accurately. And that's pretty much all I have right now. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. I know your colleagues at the Staten Island Chamber are the first line of defense there, but I know it's a lot of information. However, I'm happy to go into further detail or consider specific cases. Please feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. I know that we had some questions that came in, so I don't want to, go over things that I know you already answered, but I figured maybe we can just go over a few of these. So going back to the beginning in here, first question that came up was, would we share this slideshow? I think we could all say that yes, we will share this after the recording. We'll also make the recording available online. Dominic from the Chamber of Commerce will send this out. Second question that came in is, do you think that we might move from 25% to 50% indoor capacity? And what kind of timeline would the city give us to prepare?
Well, that's a great question. I personally. So I don't work for the city. I'll just be clear there. I work for the Chamber of Commerce and I'm a consultant by trade. So I have the same sort of questions that you do and really access to no insider information. So just giving my most informed professional opinion here, I don't think we'll be increasing indoor capacity in the near term. When I say that, I'd say probably from now through the end of the year. I just, the numbers, virus case numbers are going in the opposite direction. They're once again in the media kind of aligning the restaurant indoor dining with schools, which happened in the first place, and it didn't really work out well for our industry. So I think just looking back, I don't think it will be increasing in the next 60 to 90 days, right? Hospitality is not dead. Restaurants are not over, but right now, regulatorily, I think we'll be stuck at 25 for a moment. In terms of timeline for expanding the capacity, again, looking back, not a great track record of how much lead time anyone's received on any of this, going either direction, right? So closing down, we have like 24 to 48 hours, and reopening, what did we have in September? A week? Something like that, right? So it's very time sensitive. So I would wait to hear real official news that capacity will be increasing before I added staff. And I know this has been the biggest constraint, was like how we can't just, go from 22 seats to 100 seats overnight without staff and training and things like that. So I understand the challenge that presents operators with, and I by no means think it's appropriate, but it's the situation we're dealing with. So I would definitely say before you make any business decisions, major business decisions based on anticipated changes, I would really hold off, and I know it's hard, but hold off as long as you can until we hear official guidance, because it's been so touch and go.
So our next question doesn't require a crystal ball like the last one. So what tools do you think are most effective for the restaurants to effectively market to their audiences?
I mean, it depends. It depends on what type of business you have. If you have a business that was already heavily dependent on takeout, if you're a sandwich shop, if you're a coffee shop, and people were just coming in based on where you are in relation to their job or their commute, one way of marketing, right? So that may be some more in-store marketing. If people are still passing by and they're still purchasing over your counter, so to speak, I think you can really utilize like in-house in your location, different types of signage, cards, promotional communication face-to-face, because that's how you see your customer. If you were doing primarily takeout or delivery through your apps, communicating that way by packaging and like productizing your elements. If you do have access, like if you're using any sorts of technology like a reservation system, most people just don't know how to get that data out. And that's something we could totally help you with so that you can communicate directly. There's a multitude of ways. I think looking at each business individually is going to give us the most ability to help you. So I'd encourage that. But I think right now people are definitely living in their phones more. People are definitely spending more time online. So that's just naturally happened. So I think that's giving businesses, restaurants, which often haven't operated in that space, more of an opportunity to talk to people electronically. So that's one positive thing I've noticed. But again, each business, unfortunately, is very different. So that's something we could work on one-on-one for sure.
So recently, DoorDash had the online competition, and they were taking in businesses that I think were going to be eligible for their grants. Do you know if that grant announcement is coming out anytime soon? I didn't read that on the DoorDash site if they had a specific date either.
I think so. There was a few. There was like a DoorDash grant, and I think that was giving 75 grants to the New York area.
Yeah.
That could be announced, I think, in the next week or so. And then there was a Grubhub grant also that was giving similar. and that was supposed to be announcing the week of the 16th, which is this week. So we hopefully would hear from those soon. There are, I mean, there's definitely a need for funding for these types of operations. Like, not all of this stuff is free, right? I did notice over the weekend that Chow Now they're doing all of their online sales platform completely free for restaurants. So that's something to consider. And I just do know, though, that many operators are relying on their go-to platform, whether it's Seamless or DoorDash or Caviar, whatever you're using, your customers are looking for you there. So I think there's a little bit of retraining that is going to require some effort on behalf of the business owner in terms of finding the best platform to get you the most return. But in terms of grants and other opportunities for actual funding to help pay for this, we'll keep our ear to the ground. I think New York City definitely is hearing from us, hearing from our industry, and I've been making as many recommendations as I can for different types of funding for whether it's outdoor, winterization, technology upgrades, and things like that. So we'll keep you guys in the loop as those start to become more available.
Okay, and then there's there's a very similar question to what you were just talking about. So most restaurants are looking to cut down costs. Is there any sort of list out there which is almost like a preferred supplier vendor list, where if restaurants are looking to get certain items cheaper from other places where they can, kind of shop around? And I know that a lot of the restaurants are always looking to cut down on costs and always changing their vendors, but is there like a one go-to place that has these lists?
My brain. Not on the internet, no. Should there be 100%? That's something that I could help with. Often, like, if I take one look at like a snapshot of your monthly expenses, I could like Edward Scissorhands that for you and help figure out how we can save. There's definitely changing up the vendors, re-examining your vendors is something I always recommend on a regular day. So right now, I think it's becoming so much more important to be getting the best price you can, especially with these types of materials like PPE and like cleaning supplies and to-go boxes, jars for your cocktails, like that adds up. I have some great people for that I could send you to. If there's not like a universal database, but like in general, if you're getting everything from Cisco, you're overpaying. It's as simple as that. Like the broadline distributors are just charging an arm and a leg for you to be able to place one order in one place. We got to be a little more proactive than that right now. So I could definitely in 2 emails provide some great tips for vendors that I know that are more cost effective and flexible. I think that's what a lot of people need right now too, is flexibility with their vendors. So I could help with that on a one-on-one basis for sure.
Okay, and this is our last question coming in. They said it's a great presentation, thank you. Do you know of any restaurants that have successfully pivoted and are now doing well in this environment? And if so, is there a formula that we could follow, or could you connect them with us? So I do think that's a great question, but I think what they're looking for is a proof of concept of some similar restaurants in one of the 5 boroughs.
Right. I have an example that just pops in my mind right off the bat in Red Hook, which is kind of a remote kind of area in Brooklyn, isolated up there, no public transportation. It's kind of its own thing. He was a cocktail bar. It's called Fort Defiance. The guy that owns it is like a, Tales of the Cocktail winner, like bar guy, very well known in the city. Opened this beautiful cocktail bar about 10 years ago, and he's completely flipped it because he just can't operate a bar anymore. And he is now Fort Defiance, like general store. I would definitely suggest Googling him and hopping on his website. He's selling online all of his different types of products and provisions and jams and jellies. I think they're going to be pursuing a Department of Ag certification so they could prepare and package their own types of food. They were inspected and got in trouble already once. So they are, trying to keep up with the regulations, but they've pivoted to a grocery model. Now they still have a liquor license. They're still serving and selling booze and pre-made cocktails that must now go with food. and they have a small hot food offering, but they're really focusing on this like retail aspect. And a lot of that lives online. They didn't buy any new software. They're using Toast. Toast has like a online platform where you could sell, and it's working for them. He's surviving. He's paid all his rent. He's, you know, in a good place financially, and is even considering expanding it to a larger footprint so that he could grow that aspect of the business. So that's one. And he's kind of like I said, and Red Hook is a very unique market, very hard. Just you have just your neighborhood. So that's been a successful pivot. And I've seen that with some other people that were primarily bar focused. I think those are the people that need the most pivoting, so to speak. But it's possible, and he's doing that in the same space, in the same location. So it's definitely possible. I'm happy to connect you to other operators I work with. That's kind of the unique thing about my job, is that I have about 65 restaurant clients right now. So I'm really like ear to the ground, and I've had long conversations with all of them. So I have a pretty good high level perspective of what's happening across like a pretty broad spectrum of businesses, from small kind of corner steam table, grab and go spots, all the way up to full service dining. And there's like a lot of spectrum in between there. So I've been talking to everyone. So I think for sure, if you're looking for like specific advice on pivoting, I could probably provide some good background there.
That's great, Nicole. Thank you so much. We're going to send out some notes from today's meeting along with the actual webinar, in case you weren't able to tune in today and you want to watch it. If you have any further questions, I'll also include Michael and Steve's email address. If you want to reach out to them, they can always connect with you, answer some questions you have. And if you want to get in touch with Nicole, they are the gatekeepers to that doorway. So they'll make sure that, you know, they try to help you first before inundating with Nicole, since she's trying to work with the 5 chambers through the New York City Small Business Network. She is working with almost every restaurant in all the 5 boroughs. So we want to limit any questions that we can answer. Staten Island Chamber is here for whatever you guys need. We would be more than happy to talk with you about setting up a platform similar to Toast so that you can actually sell products and have customers come and pick them up. I think that would be really interesting to do. So I just want to thank everybody today. Nicole, once again, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to speak to everybody soon.
Thanks.